So in this video, we were looking at a circle and its different parts of it. We'll also learn about the vocabularies of each of these words: center, line, segment, chord, radius, radii, diameter, secant, line, tangent, point of tangency, and congruent circles. Very, very simple and basic concept. All right, so let's go straight into this. Now, we're going to locate each one of these in the center, in the circle. We're going to define them as you go along. All right, so the first thing that we want to look at is a center. So the center is just simply the middle part of a circle. And normally we would represent this is a dot or a point. And we just call it point C, or sorry, or we could say the center C. You could also give this center another letter. Remember that a dot is just represented by a letter. Could say center A or center B, center F. It doesn't matter what you want. You could give it any letter you want. Let's work with C for now, center C. Now, what's a line? Now, a line is just, if you look at a line like this, a line is where you have two ends that are going infinitely. In other words, it is just going infinitely, but it's a stretch. Infinite. We could give this figure a name too. We could say AB, line AB. So the ends are infinite. You see these arrows at the end. It tells you that this figure is continuing on either side. Either side. So that's what the line is. All right. We're gonna use this line sometime further down in the video. So let's keep right there. No, so we finished the circle, the line. Let's go as a segment. Now a segment is just when you have this a line being connected with two endpoints right here. I could also call this a CD. Now if you look at this carefully, we have two endpoints right here. That's what we call a segment. So that's two endpoints. And if you were to compare it with this line AB, you realize that the line has infinite ends, while this has two endpoints. So this continue while this continues. So that's like the difference between the segment and the line. Now, what's a chord? Now, a chord is a segment that its endpoints lie on the circle. Right? So the endpoints lie on the circle. I could have joined my chord another way. I could have joined it like this too. Or I could have joined it like this too. Or I could have joined it like this too. Or I could have joined it like this. So the two endpoints, they lie on the circle. If you look at it carefully, it lies on the circle. And so that's what we call a chord. Very important. A chord, what you call a chord. And so if the ends are not lying on the circle, then it's at the chord. Something is wrong. So now if you look at this now, we're going to look at what we call a radius / radii. So the word radii is a plural form for radius. And so the radius is just simply a line that starts from the center and it goes to the circle right there. Or you could say from the circle right here, it goes to the center. That's what we call a radius. And I could have more than one radii. I could have more than one radii. I could have also drawn another radius. By just doing this. Another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, another one. So it's just coming from it starts from the center and it goes right into the circle right here. All right. So we could name our radius. So you could say, we could call this A right here, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. So I could say, remember that all radii, all of these radii, they are the same in length. So if C to A is 5 centimeter, all of them are 5 centimeter. all the radii are equal, right? So always remember that all the radii, they are equal. So none is different in distance from the other, right? So that's a radius right here. Sometimes they put R for radius, right? Let's go to the diameter now. Now, if we were to extend this radius through the center, goes and go to the other end right there, we call this thing, what we call this is also a chord, but it's a special kind of chord that passes through the center of the circle, and we call this the diameter. So the diameter is a chord that passes through the center of the circle, only the center. And what you really look at, what it does, it gives you two semicircles, right? One right here and one right here. If we were to look at this chord too, what it really does, if I were to let me just erase this thing and show you something. Oops, let's go back. Let's go back. Well, let's look at this. If I were to look at this chord from the beginning, what it does, it separates, it creates two parts of the circle. It creates a big part, which we call the major segment of the circle. Major segment. And just the small part right here. So what I normally do is just write 1 and 2. So it creates two parts, a big part and a small part. This is what this really does. And if you go back to the diameter, you see where it cut. It also creates two parts, right? It creates two parts, but these parts are equal. They are semicircles. They are identical halves. And so you can know when there's a diameter from when there's a chord. So, but the diameter is a special type of chord where it cuts the circle into two halves, while a chord just cuts the circle in two parts, a big part and a small part. So you can know the difference when there is a diameter and a chord. And if we're going to say, well, the diameter and the chord probably the same thing, what's the difference between the two? Now, the difference between the two is this: the chord doesn't go through the diameter. And why do we say the diameter and the chord? Why do we say the diameter is a chord? Because if you look at this, remember the definition of a chord is when you have the segment touching the ends of the segment. The ends of the segment is touching the circle, right? So this is touching the circle, that's a chord. This is touching the circle, so it's also a chord. But this is a special kind of chord. We call it the diameter. If you look at this, the diameter cuts the circle, it passes through the center. And that's what makes it a diameter. But this doesn't pass through the center, so it's just called a chord. But at the end of the day, both figures have their ends on the circle. So both are a chord. One is a special type of chord. All right. So what was the difference? The difference is this: that the diameter goes through the center, but the chord doesn't do that. It is somewhere else. But they both are touching the circle with their two ends. So that's just an observation you can actually put right there. So yeah, students may be confused. And what is the difference between the two? And so that's the difference between the two. This is what we call it a secant line. Now, what's a secant line? Now, a secant line is like, it's a figure that contains a chord and a line. So if I were to use this figure, or I don't have to use it, I could just go right here. So a secant line, it contains a chord and a line. So if I were to connect this to form a chord, and I want to have this, draw up a line from this figure, all I could do is to extend it outside. And if you look at this carefully, this line is passing through the circle with the end points passing through. And so we call this the secant line, right? So the secant line, this is called the secant line. This is the diameter. A part of the diameter. If you look at this carefully, If we look at the relationship between the diameter and the radius is half of the diameter, while the diameter is twice the radius. And so this is the radius, which is half of the diameter radius. All right. And this is what we call the chord. This is a chord. This is the segment. And this is just a line. All right. So we're on, so the secant line passes through, all right? It passes through. And always remember that the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius, while the radius is half of the diameter. Always remember that. So if I have a diameter of 10 centimeter and I want to find out what is the radius, all I need to do all I need to do is to divide the radius by 2, and I will get half for that radius. If I have a, let's say if I have a question like what is what is my if I have a radius of let's say a radius of 2, what's the diameter? All I need to do is to time this by 2 and I get the diameter. So always remember the diameter is twice the radius, while the radius is half the size of the diameter. Now I want to look at what we call tangent and point of tangency. Very, very important. Now, so a tangent is just simply a line that intersects with the circle. So if I draw a line like this, oops, right, very good. Now, if you look at this carefully, and I could call this FC. Doesn't matter what I call it. All right, two letters. So if you look at this, let's examine this thing. So this is what we call the tangent line. And what's a tangent line? Now, the tangent line, the line that touches the circle at one location, one point outside, right? Well, it touches the point right here. Now, this is what you call the point of tangency. Now, let's try to look at the difference again, because sometimes students may misunderstand. Now, this line is the tangent line, where the circle and the line meet together, which is an intersection right here. You call this the point at which they meet, which is the point of tangency. This is the point of tangency. Point of tangency. All right, that's the point of that. I could also call this, I could give this point a name. I could say point A. All right. And so if you look at this carefully, we have almost everything except number 9. So we're going to look at number 9. So let's just review everything. The center of the circle is right at the middle. The line is just a figure that has infinite ends. The segment is a figure that has 2 endpoints. All right, similar like a line, but it has 2 endpoints. The chord of a circle is when the 2 ends of the segment touching. The segment, its ends are touching the touching on the circle itself. 2 ends are lying on the circle. We look at the radius coming from the center to one end of the circle right there. We say the radii is the plural form for it. The diameter is the line that passes through the center. So starting from one end on the circle, goes straight through the center, stop right there. All right. I could also draw a diameter also this way, or I could have drawn it another way like this. It doesn't matter. Once it passes through the center, it's going to cut the circle into 2 halves. All right. The secant line is a line that passes through the center. Sorry, passes through the circle. Passes through the circle. Secant line passes through the circle. Make sure that you remember that. You're remembering this. Passing through the circle. That's the secant line. And the tangent line is like, I would have taken the secant line and I would just bring it down outside, touching the circle at one location, one point, exactly one point. And we call this point the point of tangency. All right. And that line is actually the tangent. So let's look at what we call congruent circles. Now, the whole concept of a congruent circle is, if we go back to the theorem of knowing about all circles are similar. If I were to look at this in this concept right here, let's say look at this right here. Now, 2 circles are said to be congruent. Congruent circles is only is when the radii of both are equal. So these are congruent. Because if I were to find the perimeter of this circle and this one, I would get the same answer. If I were to find the area of this circle or this circle, I would get the same answer. So it proves that these two circles are the same. They are similar. They are congruent. They are equal. All right, so if I were to just do another example to see, now if I do this and I do that, and I'm going to look and say, are these circles congruent? They are not congruent because their radii are not the same. So congruent circles are when the radius are the radii. The radii of the circles, radii of the two circles are the same. That's when you know when two circles are congruent. And so there you go. Parts of a circle. We look at the vocabularies where we identify different parts of a circle. And in our next video, I'll be doing like an example of how we find the radius and the diameter if you have a given circle with the radius being known. You want to find a diameter, or you have a circle with the diameter being known, and you want to find a radius. Stay tuned. Please remember to share and subscribe.